Back to our grammar phone-in this morning. So about the rules of grammar, which are the rules, the right rules, and which are the wrong rules? Which are the rules that we need to stick to? Which are those rules that are sacrosanct and must never be broken? Are there any for you? Or are rules meant to be broken? That's the whole point of a rule, isn't it? Well, the kind of rule that governs our grammar, surely it should be flexible. You can turn it into poetry. Where's the poetic license in all of this? Our grammarians are here. Terry, Victor, Neville, Gwynne. Neville, where's the poetry in sticking to the rules?
What do you mean? The poets managed to stick to the rules without any difficulty. Shakespeare, and they got their rules right.
Yeah, but they bend some of those rules to allow a little bit of colour.
Which ones? Which really? I mean, even Edward Lear didn't break the rules.
Yeah. Well, which ones, Terry? Which of the poets break the rules of grammar?
All of them. E. Cummings was great for breaking rules.
Yeah.
He couldn't even spell with capital letters.
Well, precisely.
That's very clever. That's right. I knew
John
that was
Cooper
coming.
Clarke is a wonderful poet. I won't hear a word said against him, and he breaks rules all the time.
Terry does better than Cummings.
Yeah. Rosie in Dawkins with us. Rosie, do you stick to the rules or do you break them when it comes to grammar?
I only break them if I don't know better.
You always know better, Rosie. You're an expert.
I'm falling in love with Rosie, everybody. I just want
have some cider with her at some point, but let's stick to the rules of grammar for now.
She's a lovely lady.
Yeah, but why? Which ones do you not know, first of all, that you inadvertently break?
Well, I wouldn't know, would I? Because I don't know them.
Oh, I've got you. So you
He's
do
a
stick.
logical thinker too.
Yeah, so you do stick to the rules of grammar.
I do.
Why? Why is it so important to stick to the rules of grammar?
Why is it important?
Yeah.
I don't know the answer to that. I just like to do things properly.
But do you not like to have fun with the language? You know, I find that especially when we were younger, but even as an adult, making up new phrases, new ways of saying things, even though ain't grammatically correct, sometimes you just think, yeah, let's go for that.
I'm not that inventive.
I'm sure you're inventive. I'm sure we all are, because this language of ours allows us a lot of invention, doesn't it?
Dotun, did you think Shakespeare didn't enjoy himself getting his grammar right? I mean, honestly, you don't have to get things wrong to have fun, Dotun.
I'm sure he didn't always get his grammar right. Anyway, it's about Rosie now. So, Rosie, is there any particular rule of grammar that you think is sacrosanct, must never, ever, ever be broken?
Well, I'm just looking at three things with prepositions that unfortunately I came in at 2:30, so I've missed the beginning of the programme, but I'd noticed.
Oh, you've missed all the best bits. We'll tell you about that. Oh, well, you can listen to those bits again later on.
I'll have to listen later on.
Yes.
Outside of is something that's annoying me, and it's crept in, and I'm sure it's wrong.
Yeah, outside of. We do hear that a
It's
lot.
wrong, because outside is a preposition, and therefore does not need another preposition to help it.
My argument precisely.
Terry?
Met with.
Met with, yeah. Terry, what's wrong with that?
Very American.
Torture.
Yeah, met with.
They're slightly redundant usages, but we use them all the time. Therefore, they're aesthetically pleasing to us.
Speak for yourself. We do not. We do not.
Well, let's just say the majority do. That will leave you the moral high ground.
It's wince-inducing. Fed up of.
Fed up of,
If it offends you, I apologise, but the language we use is the language that the majority use. That's how our language has evolved.
If you're truly sorry and apologise, start getting it right.
Do you know?
Excuse me, I'm not taking that from a man who puts split infinitives in emails.
what you two get up to in your private email communication should
there's
not.
a wonderful one here.
No need to quote it. No need to embarrass.
Yes,
look,
there is.
My feeling, Rosie, is that, and I went to, bog standard, as they would say, comprehensive in North London, and my feeling is if it offends my ears, the bog standard comprehensive boy's ears, then it's really, 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 really wrong. But otherwise, I just think, well, what's the big deal? Who cares? Do you know what I mean?
So you are the arbiter of what's right and wrong. Not a dictionary.
I accept. I'm saying that from a subjective point of view. I accept that I'm saying it from a subjective point of view. But I think each of us can make that same subjective evaluation. For you.
Tell you which way, Dotun, we're training you. We've stopped you using hopefully.
No, but there's no need. You haven't stopped me, by the way. But there's no need to train me. I'm just saying that As with Rosie, you started off this conversation by saying you observe the rules and you only break the ones you don't know about, and you don't know about those because you don't know about them, and you stick to the rules because you're the arbiter yourself. Then, in that respect, of the rules of what offends you and otherwise, aren't you?
Dotun, Rosie's not saying that.
Isn't she?
No, she's basically saying she wants to get it right, and we all of us sometimes actually don't know the full rule, but we look forward to finding out if we get it wrong. That's why we correct each other. And I think Rose is basically saying she wants to get it right, and if she ever gets it wrong, she wants to get that right in future.
You've had a little bit too much of that side already, I see. But Rosie, you tell us what you mean.
Well, I mean what Neville just said.
Oh, right, okay. It's me that's had too much of the cider. Okay, is there any rule that you will tolerate its breakage, Rosie?
Probably not. I can't think of any at 3:20 in the morning. But those three, I'd actually noted down for a future phone-in because they annoy me so much. They just does make me wince, I'm afraid.
I'm going to have that phone in another time. Words and phrases not particularly you.
Annoy Rosie.
Exactly. Why not? I'm going to bring a lot of cider in for that conversation.
Can we keep Rosie to the end of the programme? Because I mean, I got it real bad with her. I mean, I really love her.
Thank you.
As an ACDC as well. Whole lot of Rosie.
Yeah, we could go there. We could be here all night. And Rosie, it's great having you on the programme. I would rather lose Neville than you for tonight, but needs must. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Look, there's lots to get through tonight, gentlemen. So let's keep this as classy as we can. Talking of classy, you don't have to say different from, says Hamish in Newbury, because you don't have to always leave the thing that you're comparing. You might bring the thing that you're comparing closer to you, not away, but towards. To and from can be used interchangeably here. Does that all make sense to you, Terry?
Just about. The fact that we can use them as we wish to us. And I think if there is a rule, it's what sounds most pleasing to us at the time.
Pleasing to us individually or to us?
Well, yes, as you were just saying, it's subjective, and it's a subjective aesthetic. Our language is very much an aesthetic thing. Yeah. And it's the general aesthetic is what sets the kind of rules. But within that, if like Rosie, you don't know a rule, it doesn't mean you are wrong when you're communicating. It just means that somebody else has said, oh, you shouldn't be doing that. You shouldn't be splitting your infinitive or whatever. But it doesn't matter.
But that was what I was trying to say earlier about convention, Neville, that it kind of went out the window, that we don't know the rules. Most of us don't know the rules. We speak often correctly, mostly, I dare say correctly, by convention, by repetition, by, experience and so on. Do you not think so, Neville?
Dotun, if we don't know the rules, why don't we take a bit of time and trouble and look them up?
Because the majority don't, but we still communicate.
Because the majority are crummy, that's why. Well, we actually want to raise everyone.
Hang on. You can't say that about the majority of people.
I jolly well can. The majority get most things wrong.
Yeah.
And that is why there's a beacon at the top where people who actually want to do well find out what's right and do it. And the majority don't care, and too bad for them. I'm afraid the majority is not a deciding factor.
Okay.
Right and wrong is deciding factor.
Okay.
No, that language, as we've discovered in the past, is a democratic endeavour. Therefore, the majority are right.
I deny that it's democratic. The Oxford democratic.
Let's stay away from politics, though, and bring Bridget in Northern Ireland into the conversation. Good morning.
Are you talking to me?
Is it Bridget?
No.
Oh, I got it wrong. Who is it?
It's Betty.
Betty. Ah, hello, Betty. I do apologise.
That's all right.
I'll get the grammar right. It just won't remember your name. I'm only kidding. You can call me Dopey, by the way, at this time of the morning. So, Betty, what's
No, never.
Oh, that's very kind.
I want Neville to love me too. And I want to say that it annoys me to hear people saying I was sat instead of I was sitting.
Who says that?
And we were stood instead of standing.
Yeah, I've heard of that. Yeah, I have heard that.
It's very irritating.
It is. Yeah, you can't, even you, Terry, cannot defend that. Quite apart from Neville falling in love with Betty. Terry Victor.
That's another mistake you made right there. Even I can defend that. And I'm not defending it just to be mischievous. There really is this sense that if enough people say it and it makes sense to us, it doesn't have to be right or wrong. It's communication, it's language, it's what we all do. And no doubt everybody has some trope in their language that annoys somebody else. I'm sure everybody does.
How can you defend that?
Why? By the simple fact that together we all manage to understand each other.
It's grammatically incorrect. And we can all hear
only
that.
Because one rule of grammar says it's incorrect. Why
No.
should it be incorrect?
It's grammar. It's in all rules of grammar. It's incorrect. Isn't that right, Betty? In all rules,
our verbs don't decline logically at the best of times.
Betty,
so there's nothing wrong.
Betty, there are children in Northern Ireland who I'm sure you've come across who would hear that. I mean, I'm talking about junior school, primary school children who would hear that was wrong, wouldn't you?
In Northern Ireland, there's so many things which are wrong. I can give you 3 or 4. I seen, I done, and I have went.
Ooh.
And that is endemic over here.
I seen, I've done.
No,
I done.
Seen.
Yeah.
I seen, I done.
I seen, I done.
I saw, I saw, and I did.
Yes, and I've even heard people saying, I have saw. They turn it round and upside down and backwards.
Now,
does that relate to the Gaelic language? So there is a sense of construction that's historic there.
Perhaps I know nothing of the Gaelic language.
I have saw.
Yes, I have saw. I have seen. I have heard. I have saw.
Does it defend its usage if there is some kind of connection to the Gaelic language in your view, Terry?
No, I was just trying to understand how it comes. I mean, it's dialectic as well in that instance. The same thing happens in Wales, where the construction of the Welsh tongue does affect the way it's spoken in Wenglish, which is the Welsh English version.
Sure, and everybody brings their own cultural baggage to the English language.
Exactly.
I know sometimes when you hear people in France speaking English, there'll be some grammatical errors that they all make because in their language it would be correct.
Exactly, and in every instance across the globe where World English appears.
And we do have to accept that, don't we, Neville, that there might be cultural baggage that underlines the use of...
I know. I used to teach people French English, and I used to get their English right by the time I finished with them. This is not necessary. What you're saying is it's understandable in their early days that they make blunders, but they're trying to learn English.
But I'm saying if you went to India and you spoke English and people made a certain grammatical error and they all made it consistently, you would assume that grammatical error was because of the way it's used in, say, Hindi or Punjabi or whichever language it might be.
My experience is that Indian people speak English better than most English people. I reckon an Indian will get it right when he's learning.
I don't doubt that. I don't doubt that. Incidentally, and thanks a lot for the call, Betty. By the way, Donald has said, question for teacher Gwynne on the subject of split infinitives. How many hour-long lessons do you think that Dotun would require to properly understand grammar?
I got it. I'm there.
How many hours?
I saw the joke to properly understand. That's why he gave that question, wasn't it?
Yeah. How many hours?
No, he didn't really mean that. He wanted me to miss out his split.
I know, but how many hours?
Oh, 10 minutes between you and me, Dotun.
George is with us. Good morning, George.
My lesson will be free of charge to you.
Hello, George. How are you?
Oh, I'm fine, thank you. And how are you?
I'm very well, sir. Where are you calling from?
I'm calling from my home in Hampshire.
Hampshire, okay. Good to speak to you. So, how do you speak English? Do you stick to the correct grammar always or not?
Well, I do not know whether I speak it correctly or grammatically. I am not sure about that. But however, when it comes to English language, the way I was taught English from the very first few years of my life, when I was able to go to school, the way we were taught English was, first of all, learn the different parts of English, like adverbs, adjectives, verbs, nouns, pronouns, subjective case, objective case, reflective tense, and all those kind of nonsense. And then from there we were taught how to construct.
Nonsense, yeah.
How to construct a sentence. Okay?
Yeah.
And then, so I don't know whether I'm picking it correctly or whether I picked it up from the street.
Which is the most useful part of that education, though? Was it the learning all the nonsense, the adverbs, etc., or was it the usage of it in context? Which is the most useful for you learning the language?
Yeah, for me, the most useful part was construction of a sentence. Like, for example, a rule of thumb in any sentence is this, that you have first the subject and then the verb and then the object. That is how a sentence is constructed. It doesn't matter whether it is first person, second person, plural or singular, or neuter gender, or male gender or female gender. That is out of the case.
That makes complete sense to me, Neville, because it's still following the rules of constructing sentences, not necessarily the rules of strictly English grammar. However, it still makes sense. And when George is saying he has learned the language in that fashion, and that was the most useful, surely that is the a priori.
Because you can say him saw I, and if you know your grammar right, you actually know that I is the subject even though it's the end of the sentence.
Yes, fair enough. But
you actually need the rules to understand it. Otherwise, you're
George.
Okay, listen to this, right? Let me give you a sentence, right? And then tell me what is the subject and what is the object. If I were to say to you.
To you?
Yeah, if I were to say to you, it is raining, what is the subject and what is the object?
There is no object because after being words, you don't have an object, you have a complement.
No, you're wrong there. If I say it is raining, the rain, is the subject.
Yes, it is the subject, but raining is not the object.
The object is understood. The object is understood.
There is no object in that sentence. No object is possible.
There is an object. The object is understood, although it doesn't exist, but it is understood.
What object is understood? There is no object. You cannot have an object after being. I'm afraid you got it wrong. You cannot have an object after a being word.
That's how I always thought. In fact, earlier on you were saying about India, right? I learned my English in the 70s, early 70s, right? And I could never find a single book that was printed in Britain that taught me grammar. The grammar that I learned was from textbooks that were published and printed in India, of all things.
Well, I've just written one for you. It's called Gwynne's Grammar.
Yeah, but it's now. But I'm talking about then.
Mm-hmm.
The world has become a better place.
And also, as we've already heard, George doesn't agree with your teaching because the way he was taught was very different. Gwynne's grammar may not be the one for him. And George, thanks a lot for joining us this morning. No disrespect, Neville, don't get me wrong, but just out of interest, Terry, who was right there in that little spat between George, our caller, and our grammarian, Neville Gwynne? Who was right?
Both of them were. And that's not equivocation. Both of them.
And this is in the sentence, it is raining.
Grammar they had learned.
Right, but who was correct English grammar-wise? It is raining was the sentence, and George was asking what's the object and what's the subject, and Neville was denying that there was an object.
Or even could be an object.
Sorry?
I was denying that there even could be an object.
Yeah. So who's right?
Linguistically, Neville is right.
End of story.
Logically, George is right.
Hang on.
Because George is saying it, and he has an object in mind when he says the sentence.
Yeah.
So it's to do with communication rather than the rules.
Is the language about logic or linguistics, Terry?
Logic. The construction is the basis of it, which is the basic grammar we need. It's all about logic, and it's the logic of communication.
Neville is the language
logic, and his answer was illogical. George's answer
was
illogical.
But Neville, is the language about linguistics or about logic?
Both, and they conform to each other.
Yeah, but which is it primarily about? Logic or linguistics?
Language is about grammar, which is based partly on logic.
Right, so it's logic. So George was right logically. No,
I'm not going to say that.
The language is about logic. You just accept
logic
it.
is part of grammar, but not the whole of it.
Yeah, but it starts with logic, doesn't it?
No, I'm not even going to say that. You can't put words into my mouth.
I tell you what, let's have a phone in about logic versus linguistics in terms of language. That is going to be an exciting one. In fact, I'm going to bring my iron shield for that one because I think there'll be some fireworks. I'm going to have a really big helmet on as well to protect me. I look forward to that, gentlemen. For now, though, thank you very much, Neville Gwynne, and to Terry Victor, and thank you to all of you for your contributions